Hi, I'm Donna Ray.
And I'm Al Wadley.
Welcome to our podcast, Feldenkrais for Life.
In each episode, we will discuss ideas and experiences pertaining to the Feldenkrais Method.
You're going to learn skills that will move pain to comfort, anxiety to ease, and we'll explore learning and how to spark creativity.
To learn more about Donna, visit her site at donnaray.com.
To find Al Wadley, go to achievingexcellence.com.
Hey, Donna.
Hi, Al. I'm looking forward to this conversation. We're going to talk about mindfulness.
Yeah, which I think is a very interesting topic. And Dr. Feldenkrais, he's known as developing his method, and he's also known as being one of the first Westerners to earn a black belt in judo. He's also one of the first Westerners to develop mindful practice.
Although he did not call it a mindful practice, he called it awareness practice, awareness through movement, and then the hands-on work as functional integration. As you study the Feldenkrais method, it becomes obvious that it's about cultivating mindfulness and self-awareness and knowing oneself.
Yeah, mindfulness is really a more modern term. And when he was developing his work, mindfulness, I don't believe was even a common phrase or even thought of. But with the development of an appreciation, I would say, through the study of the brain and neuroplasticity, really learning the importance of having a mindful practice and how just influential that is in terms of regulating the nervous system, regulating emotions and the mind. And it's huge. And Feldenkrais was onto this decades ago.
He was relating this kind of awareness to the practice of judo. And he was examining how humans respond during conflict. He was looking at how one could respond instead of react in a way that could be harmful for themselves. And I think that he kept looking at how movement was taking place, how there was an organic response in the nervous system to certain situations. He started to slow things down and train people so that they could become more effective in their movements, but also saw that it was changing their thinking, their emotional responses through sensory awareness and movement.
As he developed his work, he brought all of those elements into his lessons. So this emphasis on awareness of how you're actually moving, what you're actually doing, using your sensory awareness to really feel what you're doing and how you're doing it, and then to bring in the elements of thought and emotion to that as well.
If we look at the Feldenkrais method, the development of his own organic process, actually, and then examine mindfulness practices, which are centuries old, we can see that he was going in the direction of self-awareness, or again, to know thyself, which we can reference Socrates and know thyself. So one question that people ask frequently is, what is the goal of mindfulness? So I think that mindful practitioners are looking for freedom of choice. They're looking for self-knowledge. They'd like to be able to select behaviors in themselves that would be conducive to wellness and harmonious living. And there are many studies that show that people become more empathetic, compassionate, better in terms of their self-regulation. Therefore, they can choose rather than react. They respond from doing all different kinds of meditation. And I believe Feldenkrais was looking for that too, to be able to shed oneself of the kinds of cultural indoctrination that all human beings have, so that they can examine their lives and their beliefs and their thoughts so that they can respond to situations with a point of view of self-selection rather than reactivity.
Yes, creating choice and awareness and a clearer sense of self are all emergent aspects of Feldenkrais's work. We know he was aware of meditation, meditative practices. So they clearly had an influence on him and his development of his work. This whole idea of being able to slow down, sense yourself, and develop your self-awareness. So mindful practice and self-regulation, key to Feldenkrais. Mindfulness, self-regulation, key to meditation, and other movement practices as well, like yoga and Tai Chi. And so if they're done with that kind of mindfulness, they can be very impactful and help regulate oneself. I think the Feldenkrais method goes a little bit beyond that, and that when we practice the Feldenkrais method, when we practice Feldenkrais lessons, we're improving the functioning of the whole self. We're improving the functioning of every aspect of our being. Because life is a process. You improve the quality of the process, you improve the quality of life, you improve the quality of everything else. So if you practice the Feldenkrais method and you're a yoga practitioner, your yoga will improve. If you're a Tai Chi practitioner and you practice the Feldenkrais method, your Tai Chi will improve. Feldenkrais lessons help to improve the function of all aspects of ourselves and our functioning in the world.
So it's as a result, I think, of paying attention and being able to make distinctions within all practices that we improve the quality of what we're doing. And I think that yoga practitioners and Tai Chi practitioners would argue with you. I think they would say, no, we do that in yoga. We do that in Tai Chi. We do that in Aikido. We have to make distinctions, and we're looking for quality. So I've had many conversations like this with people, and sometimes they feel like I'm not really respecting their practice. And I have practiced yoga and Tai Chi and Aikido, and I did practice yoga and Tai Chi before doing the Feldenkrais method. My personal experience is that I was not able to make certain distinctions because I wasn't sophisticated enough. And it wasn't until I started doing the Feldenkrais method and actually lying on the floor and sensing and moving that I was developing a greater granularity for movement and sensation and awareness. Built into the Feldenkrais method, as you know, are movements that are highly novel. So this movement that we so often do of moving our eyes in the opposite direction of turning our head, for example, that's clearly a differentiated movement that in normal life we would not do. And you can even try that for a moment. It's like leave your eyes fixed on a point in front of you and simply turn your head to the right and to the left and just feel how strange it feels to leave your eyes fixed and to turn your head. Notice your breathing and see, do you hold your breath or do you breathe more deeply? And then pause for a moment and sense your eyes and sense your vision and notice what's happened. You may have the sense that your peripheral vision has expanded. So Feldenkrais built in these peculiar ways to break very fundamental neurological patterns in our brain. So when I learned Feldenkrais work, awareness through movement, I did weekly classes for several months before I joined the training program. I was still practicing Tai Chi. I was still doing yoga. And I was able to sense my skeleton, find my balance, and make distinctions that I could not have done otherwise. Now, there probably are people that, I was in my middle 20s. Maybe there are people that have done it much longer and were much better at it than I was. But I found it rather astonishing that I could take the sensitivity and awareness to those practices.
There's a lot of Feldenkrais practitioners who practice martial arts, Aikido, and they practice yoga and Tai Chi and things like that. And they really value the interplay between their Feldenkrais practice and their practice of yoga or their martial art, that they enhance each other And it's like the martial art or the yoga gives an application, in a way, to what you can develop through the Feldenkrais method. It kind of creates a feed-forward system. So I myself have not done those things. My meditation is like building things. I love that process. And it's an act of awareness for me. And that's my application of the Feldenkrais method. And I use the principles of mindfulness and the principles of the Feldenkrais method when I'm constructing something. So it's a very meaningful and deeply rooted experience for me. So the Feldenkrais method is something that really can enhance any practice you're into, and it can actually evolve pretty much anything you're doing into a mindful act.
It makes me think about people practicing weightlifting and using the Feldenkrais method. So if you're building something and moving around, I imagine that you're having to move lumber, pick things up that are pretty heavy. Maybe you're pounding nails and you're having to do some kind of movement over and over again. So in the process of building something, there's a lot of physical challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, kinesthetic puzzles is the way I look at them. So I'm going to move a 150-pound rock. There's a great deal of self-engineering and engineering in relationship to the rock to be able to move this rock. And so I find that to be a very, interesting experience as how am I going to do that? How am I going to move this boulder and move it easily and fairly comfortably? It's an interesting, mindful practice. You mentioned lifting weights and the Feldenkrais method. So it can seem kind of counterintuitive to think about those things coming together, doing something that requires strength and a lot of physical organization. But the same thing is true with the martial art. I mean, martial arts can be quite vigorous and they can be very intense kind of movements. The Feldenkrais method applied to something like that can create ease and awareness of what you're doing. It can be really brilliant, satisfying kind of experience.
So the experience of building, weightlifting, doing yoga, Tai Chi, or sitting and meditating can all be refined. So we can bring more self-awareness to what we're doing in every situation. Now, when I'm reading, listening to longtime scholars of Buddhist meditation, Zen meditation, the practice of martial arts, it seems to me that there's an element that everybody brings up, and that is somehow priming our brain nervous system so that there's a nanosecond or a pause before we speak, before we act, so that we have a choice. And I believe that we do that in the Feldenkrais method too. And in fact, we take breaks. So we do something, we take a break. We do something and take a break. I think that this is leading us to a way of inhibiting an automatic response so that we're not just falling into old categories of thinking or movement or acting. And that pause, however short it may be, is giving us the ability to make choices that we would not automatically make. And this leads us to a sense of freedom and choice that we would not have otherwise. That comes from self-regulation. And we do even know within ourselves as children, or when we're watching babies and toddlers and young children grow up, part of what we're doing as adults with those children is intervening when they're not able to regulate themselves. And that's a pause. That's helping them make a choice. So they may want to punch their neighbor in school, or they may want to take another baby's toy away, whatever it is. And we want to intervene so that they learn self-control. So in the Feldenkrais method, I think we're learning self-control, and even in meditation practices, at this very, very subtle level. What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're really onto something in that the granularity that we bring into the Feldenkrais method is something that is not content related. It is not to achieve a specific kind of goal or posture or movement. So it's not doing a kata. It's not going into an asana. It's not something like that at all. In a way, it's kind of meta to any movement that we do, because we're doing these novel movements, these novel sequence of movements combined with awareness, and we're bringing in a lot of granularity into that. So we slow it down, like you said. We make different decisions. We interrupt the habitual, and we redirect into choice. So it's so effective in enhancing other practices because of that, because it is not content related necessarily. We've removed the function out of the context. And then when you go back into your practice, whatever it is, whether it's martial arts or whether it's yoga or even knitting, those things will improve. And I got to tell you a little story. I love this story. So I remember listening to a lecture by Ram Dass a long time ago. So he's giving a lecture, and he's got this audience there, and he's talking about his psychedelic experiences with LSD and his guru in India. And there's this older lady in the front row, and she's, nodding her head in agreement with everything that he's talking about. And then, so he's like, wow, how can she possibly know about these experiences? So he talks about even more far out psychedelic experiences, and she's nodding her head in agreement. And it goes on like this for a while. And afterwards, he goes up to her and goes, I noticed you were agreeing with all these things I was talking about. How have you had these experiences? And she says, well, I crochet. So in her process of crocheting, she would go into these altered states of consciousness and have these far out experiences. She never needed to take LSD or shrooms or anything like that, but she was able to cultivate those altered states of experiences. For her, crocheting was a very mindful experience where the sense of self broke down, and she was able to experience other ways of experiencing herself.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. That's phenomenal. So, what you're saying and what Ram Dass discovered with the crocheting woman is that altered states are created in all kinds of ways. And some of us have, experimented with mind-altering drugs, and some people never will, but it doesn't mean that people do not experience altered states in situations of building, like you're saying, with yourself, or crocheting, or I've heard people talk about knitting like that and bringing awareness to their knitting, and going for a hike, walking. And we have walking meditation, but it's about how we're using our attention while we're doing those things, I think.
I think so too. It's not just spacing out. So what do you do with your awareness? How do you guide it? How are you sensing yourself? And it's not to say that spacing out doesn't have its applications. It definitely has some function in life, or we wouldn't do it.
Well, spacing out can be an altered state.
Yeah. Altered states are altered states, and we go into them all the time. Yeah. Meditation, uses an altered state, really kind of like a trance state. As runners get into a trance state. So all kinds of things use that kind of state of mind or state of being that has depotentiated the normal ways of thinking and perceiving, and turns your sensations in a different way.
Yeah, and the Feldenkrais lesson includes inward and outward, because we talk about the environment and the ground and gravity and how we're moving, or in some cases, how we're getting down to the floor and getting up. So having attention that's more than just dual, that's really considering everything around you as well as your sensory motor state, is included in a Feldenkrais method.
Yeah, there really is. He really worked with all aspects of human functioning. He really did.
Yeah, and I think, again, going back to infant development and early childhood, is that you see those sequences of movements in our Feldenkrais lessons. So it's hearkening back to even reflexes at a very, very young age in the first few months of life, and utilizing the material that's in the nervous system as an adult, and understanding that that's a way to utilize the intelligence of the nervous system. And when we do that, that transfers to all these other things that you've already mentioned, other practices of self-awareness, but also movement, dance, ballet. I mean, everything that we do can be improved in terms of the quality and the essence of how we're behaving while we're doing it, from spending time on the floor doing Feldenkrais easy movements. And, he included just about everything that you can imagine. You can find a lesson that's somehow addressing that, like standing on your toes as a ballerina, or sitting on a zafu and meditating. There's a lesson that comes to mind that I have on a recorded series, Feldenkrais for Meditators, and it's sitting on a zafu or a pillow and finding your sitting bones, and then lengthening your spine on top of your sitting bones and sensing your head floating, and then just altering your movements by moving your head, tilting it to the right and to the left, and sensing how that trickles down to your pelvis and your sitting bones. And so those that are listening could actually be doing this now. They could be standing even and shifting weight from one foot to the other, or sitting on their sitting bones and lengthening their spine. So sensing the relationship between your head and your pelvis to the right and to the left. Notice your breathing at the same time. And then shift your weight forward slowly and shift it backward, and sense your sitting bones. Notice the length of your spine and your head resting at the top of your spine. And notice your breathing. Now already you see you're beginning to move into a sensory motor awareness state. And when we move into sensation, we actually stop thinking in the same way. Now, if you want to play with this, you can think about a cone sitting on the top of your head and the point of the cone touching the ceiling. Now draw a circle with the tip of the cone on top of your head all the way up to the ceiling, and notice how your pelvis circles when you circle your head in this way, and observe the direction of your circle. And every now and then notice your breathing again. You can pause whenever you want to and rest in the middle. And if you'd like, you can go the opposite way. Notice your breathing. And you can play with your attention. You can notice your feet as you do this, for example, whether you're standing on your feet or you have them on the floor. You can notice your shoulders. So part of the novelty and amusement is to shift your attention to various parts of yourself while you're doing a movement like this, and always look for ways to reduce the muscular effort. So you can find more and more comfort and ease in how you're moving. And then notice your breathing again, and pause and observe yourself. And how would you describe the difference, Al? You've been doing this with me.
I feel a very nice calmness right through the midline of myself, and kind of a balance and an evenness through myself. So I'm standing. So I wasn't sitting doing this, but I'm standing. And a really nice feeling of being grounded, yet lengthened at the same time. And so if you were doing this at home and you're sitting in a chair, and you probably have a different sense of yourself in sitting, probably more stable, probably taller, more lengthened through the spine. And so I think it's a really fine example of how a Feldenkrais lesson can help improve a function like sitting, like sitting for meditation. Let's make meditation a lot easier, make it a lot more comfortable. So some people struggle with the sitting in a meditation. By doing something like this can make it comfortable so improve your meditations. I think it's a really good example of how Feldenkrais improves the functioning without going in to, okay, we're going to improve your sitting on a Zafu pillow. It's going to be easier. Your meditation is going to improve.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a brilliant example.
Yeah, and you don't have to believe it's going to work. You don't have to change your belief system. You can keep believing whatever you want about your yoga meditation, or because it's very sophisticated. I know there are aspects of yoga that are beyond my knowledge. And it's true for all different kinds of meditation as well. And we're not looking to change anybody's belief system. We're just looking for ways to create more enjoyment while you do what you do, to reduce your aches and pains, to find what we call efficiency of movement, to bring joy to what you're doing. And sometimes, we humans become so serious about these practices, whatever they are, that we take the fun out of what we're doing, the fun of learning, the novelty, the enjoyment. And I think we can bring that back in with the Feldenkrais method.
Yeah. And it just creates so much more ease. And it can really reinvigorate practice with yoga or Tai Chi or Aikido, whatever it is, whatever you're into. Moving boulders in my case. You can really invigorate that and make it interesting. It can add a little bit of vitality to it. And it's not to replace any of those things, but as an enhancement. And not only do those things improve, but everything else improves too. You'd be more comfortable in your car, and you're driving, or cooking in your kitchen. Cooking for me is another kind of meditative aspect. I love cooking and preparing food, and it's another place to practice awareness through movement for me. It's just a fascinating practice to work with the Feldenkrais method and the Feldenkrais lessons, whether you do it with a practitioner or whether you take classes like with Donna or myself, or if you buy a product, an audio download or a book. Donna has a couple of lessons that I sell on my website for improving yoga. She has one on her website and my website about improving meditation, so making sitting more comfortable for yourself. And of course, if you're a martial artist, given that the Feldenkrais method is rooted deeply in martial arts, you're going to improve your martial arts. There's no question about it. So it has a very broad reach through every aspect of our lives and every aspect of our functioning. So I really encourage people to check it out and try it out and find out the benefits for yourself.
I agree with you 100% plus, Al. I know we both devoted much of our adult lives to practicing and teaching the Feldenkrais method. So our audience knows that this is our bias. But we do it because we love it and we love people and we want people to feel great. So it's a wonderful thing to pursue. I always appreciate speaking with you and talking about the Feldenkrais method and how it relates to other things.
Yeah, me too. It's a lot of fun. We'll be doing this again soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye. If you'd like to follow up with a question, send an email to info@feldenkreisforlife.com. We would love to hear from you.
You can learn more about us on our websites.
You can find Al at achievingexcellence.com.
You can visit my site to join my classes and reach out to me for private lessons online or in my Longmont studio. You'll find my store, the Feldenkrais store, there as well. We can purchase books, audio products, and videos. Donna's website is donnaray.com.
And if you visit my website, you'll find that I'm offering individual sessions group classes in the Feldenkrais Method, mentoring groups, professional Feldenkrais training program information, and recorded lessons.
Thank you again so much for joining us. I look forward to you hearing us next week.
Bye now.
Bye.